Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com, and this is Disconnect to Connect One Word Conversations. Now, One Word Conversations is brought to you by I Am William Brown, a place where you can be yourself and live your life. So you can have conversations with me to help you to be yourself. And I also have items there. And so I have books, a journal, and U-cards. And I usually spotlight the U-cards for this conversation because it's an intention setting card. So to set the intentions for this conversation, I've picked my U-cards and here they are. I am enough. You are lovable. I always like to feel lovable. And the quote card for this conversation is, be you, the world will adjust. That's inspiring, to me. So within that, I will introduce our word for today. And our word is community. And with everything that's going on in our country, in our world, I think really looking at how community is showing up for us is a great conversation to have. And it will allow us to see how we're showing up and not showing up for each other. So with that in mind, I am going to bring my friend up and we are going to have a conversation.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really, really well, and I'm very excited and honored to be here. Thank you.
All right. So this is the opportunity where I ask my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Elizabeth Foggie, Elizabeth D. Foggie. And wow, there's so many things that I can say.
I felt that there. It's like, wow, there's a lot of them.
I feel like I've lived like 3 lifetimes in one go, and I'm only like 35. So, but I'm an artist. I'm a ritualist. I'm media producer. So I create digital media. Everything from like websites to graphics, and I'm always exploring different ways essentially to communicate and relate to others, and many different ways to kind of express myself out in the world and who I am. So I think that's the most succinct way to say who it is that I am in this moment.
No, I totally get it, and I appreciate the labels that you invited to this conversation, and
Thank you.
because sometimes we don't know who's showing up, right?
Right. Real talk.
right. So explain those. And so, how does the word community show up for you?
Yeah, so I feel like, community is one of those words that I think for most of my life, I've had a really difficult time making sense of. I feel like all of the ways that people kind of by default find community were very much a struggle for me. And so when other people used words like family and friends, and then they would describe their experience, my experience was so different that to me, I was wondering, well, then does that mean I don't have community?
Right.
And so I would say that when I began to discover what that word meant for me, it really came from traveling a lot, because then it was very clear that I was stepping into a foreign space, and yet, or a place that was unfamiliar to me, whether, the culture, the customs, the day-to-day, the shopping experience, the money, everything was different. The people were different. Language was different. And yet, that's where I began to formulate the idea of community and what was actually a part of that. What were those kind of characteristics or qualities that were necessary for me to have, for me to that maybe everybody else was pointing to by default.
Right.
But for me, it was a very intentional formation. And so community at this point is really about relationships. It's
Right.
about relationships that you have with others, but also how those relationships outside of you influence the relationships that you have with yourself.
Wow.
And a community specifically is um, the elements, I guess, of a healthy community.
Right. Right. Because there are some unhealthy ones, right?
Right, right. I mean, there's all sorts of communities, but but because the foundation of it is relationship, so
Right.
there can also be unhealthy relationships.
Right.
For me, what I found that was that made up a healthy community for me, that was supportive for me, was care, consideration,
Right.
respect, and communication.
Right.
Because
Wow.
I'm an over communicator.
Right.
I
Hey.
like
Yeah.
the details.
No, I totally get that. I get the communication part. I rather be an over communicator than an under communicator, because
Yeah,
then we're creating stories, it's like,
that part.
right,
Yeah,
right. So it's like, so yeah, just tell it all, and you just kind of say, okay, I don't need all that kind of stuff. And I
right.
think the one thing that you said, that it's the same thing for me, is that default. I never used that language before, but I get it. The default of, I go to school with these people. I got, they live in my house. So, all, they're in the family, all that kind of
Right,
stuff, you're the same race. So there's a community. It's like,
right,
I don't like you people, right? You people
right.
ain't helping me, right? And it was just really, so it was like, I felt like there was something wrong with me, that
Exactly.
I was doing it wrong.
Right.
I am not, why can't I, basically operate in this default communities that are happening in my life? And it's just like, and I love how you said through travel, you gained access to creating community,
Yes.
building community. I didn't understand when I would first find people in networking groups, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm a community builder. It's like, what? It's like, they just happen. What do you mean that you're
Right.
building you're starting a cult or something? What's
Right.
going on? Right? Or something. But
Right.
it is really, there are, like you were saying, shared values, there's experiences, there's just all these things that are nurturing you to just be yourself, not just be a
Yes.
better person, but to be yourself. And that's a community
Yes.
that that I think we're calling to within those relationships.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's just really having more control and not staying within the default of community,
Yes.
that then I'll speak for myself.
Yes.
In those defaults, I would put up with all kind of craziness,
Right.
because well, it's my family, right? Right. This is where so I get,
It's
they
all
ain't
I
going
got.
nowhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I have learned in my old age to love my family from a distance, right? Right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's like, just because you my family don't mean you're great, you're
Right.
on that outer community that that I see every once in a while, right?
Right. Because I mean, and I think that's a really important distinction to make, because I think when we don't understand what's actually supportive for us, like as individual beings that are part of
Right.
a group,
Right.
then that's when there can be a lot of trauma that occurs, and a lot of addiction to trauma, to be perfectly honest,
Right.
because we stay in places that aren't actually nourishing us, and then we feel stuck, and then we feel disempowered,
Right.
and that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't
Right.
serve the community that you're a part of. And what I've actually found is, as I've intentionally grown into um, discovering what supports me and the communities that share my values and what those values are, being able to articulate that, the more I've been able to show up. And then as a result, I end up impacting the communities that I was default ushered into
Right,
that
right,
actually weren't serving me. And so I think recognizing that distinction is
right,
really important for mental health, but also community wellness on all spectrums, whether it's default or
right.
intentional. Yeah.
Wow. No, I just got that. I am a better member of my family community when I'm around the community that I've created, right? That
Yes,
the community that's serving me and supporting me, right?
exactly.
Um, but when I wasn't connected to that, I was like forced to go in and deal with, them, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I had no, because there was this missing,
Mm,
right? I knew that they weren't giving me support and value for whatever reason, whatever felt
right.
that I needed. But I didn't know how to articulate it, or they, because of their function or dysfunction,
Right.
weren't able to really understand that. So I was just, the oddball kind of want
Yeah.
to talk to me all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like I don't got time for this, right?
Right.
Type of thing. And it's like I'm asking questions to understand what's going on and trying to help. And they're like, no, we don't talk about that around here,
Right.
right? We don't, we don't ask questions. We just
Right.
do. We just
We
we
just
just
do.
family, right?
Uh-huh.
Right? It's like, well, does this family know y'all crazy, right?
Right.
Right?
What
It's like,
it's like, what are we reflecting back to each other? Because that's the function of a community, is to reflect the values that we share back to one another, so we remember who it is that we are. So if you're in a community and what you're seeing reflected back to you don't feel right,
right. It's
then
like,
you
uh-oh.
might need to start investigating other places where that might share your values, so that when you show up as a whole person, you know?
Right. To go. But yeah, I think what I was, about to say, and I hope this is not the cause of it, was saying that I would say about, the Brown family lovingly that, Meet the Browns, the TV version
Yeah.
was, tame compared to what, my Browns were, you know.
Real talk.
But it was, balancing that and figuring that out. But I really got from your sharing earlier that we create our own community. We create the community that we need,
Yes.
that we want. And the more that we're open to that, we can be in community, right? We can
Yes,
stay
we
in community.
and we can truly feel like we belong, because I think that's such a very deeply entrenched human need. We're social animals, so we
Mhm.
really want to feel like we belong, but we also have um, we're a little bit, our brains are set up a little bit differently, in that we have a lot of agency and choice. We're
Mm.
not simply just run by our instincts. We have the ability to reflect, and then to make different choices based on the direction that we want to go. And so I think, um, you know, part of the maturation process, the part of growing up, is
Right,
recognizing what you actually do have control of and what you don't. And
right,
recognizing that what you don't have control of is not the end all be all. It's simply that you have to discover another way to fill that need.
right,
Maybe it's not what you imagine, but by exposing yourself to new situations, new places, new people, you come across different solutions that may not exist in your current community, right? Your
right,
default community, so to speak. And
right.
so that, I think, is really important. So really it's about um being brave enough
Hmm.
to being vulnerable enough to be okay with that uncertainty and the unfamiliar, because I
Right.
think that part is definitely instinctual. We're like, we have a resistance to
Right.
that because we see it as potential danger. It's like, I know this danger already. I know
Right.
this doesn't feel good, so I can
Right.
kind of adapt to it. We're adaptable creatures,
Right.
but you don't have to. And I think
Right.
when you give yourself permission to really own that and
Right.
embody that, your life changes dramatically.
Right. No, I so get that. It's like my childhood is now has meaning, right? Right. 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 You know, it's it is, and I totally get how the familiar, how how I've been we in some cases we have been conditioned to kind of stay with and deal with the familiar because um I've crafted all of my tools, my coping tools and skills and weapons and all that other kind of stuff for these people, right?
Yes, yes.
You know?
I don't know what I'm going to be out
Right. It's like I don't know. These might not work. You
there.
know?
Right.
So I'm gonna stay right here, right? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But like you lovingly said, you don't have to live that way. You don't have to stay on guard, on patrol within your community. That is just it's just no way. I think it goes back to one of the words, and I am enough.
Yes.
And really, the more that we embrace that,
Yes.
that enough, there is no lack in those default places that gives us the courage
Yes.
to keep it moving, as they say, right? To flow into what you're creating, the community that you're creating, and recognize that you are lovable, right?
Yes.
I can just see, and then so all of the people, all of your tribe members or all that kind of stuff are let's just waiting for you to be brave enough to just move along into it.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly that. Exactly that. And so, in order for that to get easier and easier as you grow and develop,
Right.
and it's so much easier when you're younger. Because those coping mechanisms aren't as entrenched as you get older. You really are not looking to make any.
Right. It's like, this is who I be, man. Deal with
Right,
it,
good. So the earlier you can really activate that within yourself, it helps you in your growth process as an individual, because we're not islands. We don't exist on our own, and the
Right.
support that we need, if it's not present where we are, we really have to go and find it and locate
Right.
it. And I think
Oh,
also there's another you word or you phrase that you used today that was basically talking about um, acceptance. Essentially, it's
right.
like,
Be you, the world will adjust. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that really is a good reflection question in terms of, am I in the community that actually supports my full being?
Right. Wow.
If you can't essentially, if you feel as though that phrase, oh, that's not true, then you're probably not in your
Right.
community.
You're probably
You
not.
gotta keep
Right.
talking, because when you're in your community, even your flaws, even
Right.
the things that you perceive as flaws, I'll say that,
Right.
even the things that you perceive as flaws have a role in your community.
Right.
Everything that you are has a purpose, even if it's problematic in some places and as opposed to other places. And so
Right.
you have to find out, you have to seek out, where is who I am in my fullest expression actually a good match?
Right.
You know what I mean? Where can I serve, even in this community, it's a flaw or a
Right.
default or something
Right.
problematic that brings me pain. But in this other community, it's exactly what's needed. So
Wow.
that's really important as well to keep in mind.
No, I totally got that. And I think many times that that I've experienced discomfort in a community,
Mhm.
right? It was more about I was kind of being myself, but more of being, um, tolerable to them, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that wasn't working for me, right? So it's like I wasn't myself and I wasn't enough for them, right? It was like, so it's like the more that there's this level of freedom of being yourself,
Yes.
then your community will dance with you and
Yes.
adjust to
Yes.
how you're showing up and not showing up.
Yes.
And that's
That
the dance.
that
That's
is it is all a relationship. It's this continuous feedback loop that's happening. And so it's like, yeah, exactly like you're saying. It's like when you begin to actually show up as yourself, and when you
right,
actually show up, things just automatically start to shift.
right, right. And it's like, wow, did I do that? Right?
Right, right. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm myself. Okay, this default community is kind of like dropping to the wayside, or some people are coming with me because they're like, oh yeah, this will work for me either.
Right,
And then
right,
you begin to meet people who are like, oh, I really like this quality in you. It's like that quality,
right, right,
there's trouble over there.
right. You know how many whoopings I got for acting like that, right?
Right, right. Real talk.
It's like,
Yeah.
wow, that is great. I mean, you've really given me life within this conversation. I mean, this is really to go from feeling like, taking on the label as oddball, right?
Right,
As odd,
right,
of not being, misfit, right?
right,
Not fitting in,
right,
to really being able to recognize that just because you don't fit here
right.
doesn't mean you don't fit anywhere,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. You're fine. You're
Right,
fine. There's nothing wrong with you.
right, right. It's like, it's like, get that, right? And you just kind of be out. And I think most of the challenges that we're having, I believe that we're having in our society, in our country, in our world, is
Yes.
because you have these misfits are believing that they don't fit somewhere, but they're trying to force it. And then it comes when there's a force, there is, there's this dominance, then
Yes.
there's supremacy, there's
Yes.
all this other kind of nonsense that happens. You're not in the flow of your life.
Yeah.
And then we start believing crazy. I almost swore. Almost said a bad word, right? Right, right. We start believing crazy stuff that I am better than you, right? That and it's just like, no.
No.
It all started. You're not in the right community, dude.
Right.
Right? You need to get somewhere that they encourage you to not to be an asshole, right?
Right. You gotta act like that. You actually feel
Yeah.
good.
It's like, that's why, oh, that's all. You just in the wrong community. That's
Right.
all. Right.
Right. Right. Right.
Wow. Right. Hey, that's like I said, I get that. If we get that and be okay with, hey, the default thing,
Yeah.
it ain't working.
It
It ain't
ain't
working.
working. We got
And-
we can let that go now,
Right.
We can let
Wow.
that go. And it's yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so much to be said about that. I feel like.
Right, and we could talk about this for hours, but I'm sure because there's a lot of things. It's like I feel like Jiffy Pop or something. It's like yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
It's
like
that.
say that, and it's like no, it's like we can't talk all day with this. But it's like, is there anything else that with all of this? And I'm sure I'm going to have to come back, revisit this, remind myself that
Yeah.
anytime I feel that I am less than, it's like, oh, dude, you're just in the wrong community right now. You just
Yes.
need to keep it moving, sir.
Yes. It's a
Um,
it's a for me, it's a thing that I have to constantly remind myself, like, let me be clear. I do not have it all together.
Right.
Let me be, I am extremely articulate and very reflective, but I do not have it all together.
I signed up for that one too, right?
Right. So I would say, I think the most important thing that I would like to leave people with is that, um, if we operate in the world from a place of relationship with ourselves and with one another, and we think about the experience that we want to have in relationship, what we want to feel, that's really important. Um, if we can keep that at top of mind, we can use that as a compass to determine where we need to go next, and recognize that. Um, that it's a process.
Mm,
It's not a destination. So it's
right.
not like, oh, now I'm in my community and you're
Everything's good.
constantly growing, you're
Right.
constantly discovering new things about yourself, um,
Right.
because that is life.
Right.
And so if we can just abandon the idea of um, permanence
Right.
and embrace the idea of growth, continuous
Right.
evolution, discovering,
Right.
continually, continuously discovering who we are in this moment. That will take you a long way. And how we
Wow.
need to feel. That's really important to understand. How do I really want to feel? Because we can
Right.
do a lot of thinking up here, and it has nothing to do with how we actually feel.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I totally get that, and so, I put your website so people can connect with you and see your travels and see your community, right?
All sorts of stuff.
Because you'd be moving, right?
I was moving. I mean, yes. Thank you.
So, but this has been great. Blessings, my friend. It has been way too long
Yes.
that we have been talking, but this has definitely been great.
I'm so grateful to you. And even back when I was in undergrad, um, you were such an inspiration for me even then, like a grounding place. And it's so interesting because I feel like my life has come full circle to that, back to that moment. Like now I'm doing a lot of the stuff that I learned from
Hmm.
you, under you.
Wow.
I've utilized that, or I use that as a jumping point into, technology and digital media, and just also how to show up in a
Wow.
in a way for as a grown up.
Wow.
So I,
As this adulting thing, right?
yeah, yeah, I really remember that about you, and so I just wanted to say also, because I don't think I've ever verbally said that. Thank
Oh.
you for being a model.
I definitely appreciate that. There were so many things about that time that I wondered for myself if I was grounded or making sense. But sometimes our life, when we make connections, that there are some connections beyond our understanding,
Yes,
that in those moments we can have conversations and we can have sharing, even if we're not totally in that space, we
yes,
can still leave those seeds
yes.
to kind of create what you're experiencing now. And so I'm great that I was aware enough of myself to be able to really connect with you on a level that is showing up for you today.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I really needed that because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff happening and not happening during that during that time for me that I kind of question. It's like, was it all worth it? And it's like this reminds me that it was. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
so honored to be in community with you.
Likewise.
Okay, blessings.
Blessings.
Um, wow. Um, yeah, I think the community that we create, that's what I've gotten. I hope you've gotten that too. And and I love the default community. Is there a default community that is holding you back from being yourself? With no judgment to the people and the souls that are there. Just recognize that there is a place. that you belong. I know it sounds like a song or something. I know. It's like start hearing music in my head. It's like I have no idea what song that is, but but there is a place where you belong. And yeah, that is what's needed to be said right there. I hope this conversation has created value for you. And you can have conversations like this and others by reaching out to me at IamWilliamBrown.com. Just sign up for an introductory coaching call. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow.